They swear monsters haunt the dark. They're wrong. The clever ones learn to laugh at the right joke, keep their head bowed at the right angle, and pass warm bread to kings with hands that never shake. For 10 years I wore a human face like armor, until the Alpha King spoke my secret name, and every candle in the hall leaned in to listen. They call me Mira Ash. It's a good name for a kitchen girl. Soft as flour, ordinary as suit. The one that belongs to me is not a name you can hold. It's a note that bends light, a word in a language the world forgot after it learned iron. Lyra. When someone says Lyra, the air remembers how to rise. Most mornings begin with heat and silence. The ovens in Duskvale's kitchens are great brick beasts that breathe in coals and exhale patience. I learned their moods the way other girls learn prayer. Which arch wants a slow loaf, and which will blister pastry out of spite. How to slide a peel beneath, a crust without waking its temper. When the bread swells just so, shoulder rounded, seam smiling. I whisper the binding and press my palm to a cracked hand mirror propped against the flour bin. The glass is old enough to tell the truth. It shows a girl with the kind of face no one looks at twice. Brown eyes, brown braid, skin wind, freckled and clean. If I focus, I can see the edges go wrong. The place where my outline wavers, where the light under my skin insists on being seen. That insisting is louder each season. I bury it under the words my mother taught me in a voice that shook. The binding tastes like swallowing a spark and telling your throat to call it water. Hands. Marcus snaps, clapping me back into the room. He's head cook, first priest of fire, Louvres to second rise. The northern convoy sent word. His Majesty returns at dusk. The word Majesty drops into my belly like a cold stone. Not because kings frighten me. Men with crowns are only men who have learned how to hold a room hostage. But because this king does not walk like a story. Kael Draven wears a throne, the way a wolf wears rein, with irritation, with purpose, with a sense he might run if anyone dared to tell him not to. When war drums humor the sky, he goes north and comes back with iron under his nails and emptiness in his eyes, like he left something friendly buried in snow. I have dodged him 5 years, an art form built from servant doors and timing. I move when fanfare moans. I vanish when lords do not blink. You can hide a universe in a kitchen if you keep your head down and your palms sugared. The ovens hiss. The binding cools. I punch dough and pretend I am only muscle and recipe. The wind changes. It's small, just a thread the nose notices. A different temperature in the crack beneath the door. Every dog in Duskvale will wake when that thread arrives. The hall goes quiet without knowing why. Even the steam pauses, as if it remembers the nose it belonged to when it was fog at the river, and decides to listen. Bootsteps. Not the skitter of servants, not the tidy metronome of guards. a gate that edits a corridor as it enters. He stops outside our door. Flower hangs like a constellation between us and the silence. The latch turns. He is not the tallest man I have seen, and still somehow too large for the room. The kitchen shrinks to fit him, and hates that it did. Dark hair pushed back with his hands, instead of a comb. A scar at the brow that remembers a blade and refuses to be interesting about it. Eyes like good soil with gold finding excuses to happen. Continue, he says. His voice is not loud. It arrives with the authority of geography. We obey too quickly. Obedience is its own confession. He moves among us the way winter tests windows. Not unkind. Not kind. Curious about which seams will give. He asks Marcus why the rosemary was bruised instead of chopped, and Marcus, who could boil an ocean into a sauce. Answers like a boy who forgot his hymn. He smells the simmering broth and knows which bones raised it without glancing at the pot. Then he stops at my table. And this? He asks Marcus, as if I were a new tool waiting for a name. Lyra, Marcus says. Fast hands. Constant. Doesn't burn the hearth. Makes a honey loaf even nobles don't complain about. Look at me. The king says. It isn't a command in the way alphas do. A push that makes the spine remember it can bend. It is a door left open with the weather begging it to be a window. I raise my head. A long second rips free of the clock and hovers. I do not blink. There are lives that split on the moment you blink. Something passes between us that has nothing to do with eyes. It travels on scent and memory, and the uncomfortable recognition of belonging. The wolf in him rises. Not claws, not teeth, just attention, the animal in his blood choosing what to listen to for the rest of its life. My binding winces. He reaches for a half-formed loaf, fingers running the seam I just shaped. When his skin brushes mine, the disguise howls. Light moves under my palm like a missed heartbeat catching up. The dough thumps to the table. My shadow tilts the wrong way on the wall. Too many angles for one girl. Candle flames lean. Someone swears softly and pretends they didn't. Forgive me, I say, and mean it. For what? I don't know. For existing in the wrong key and knocking a room off pitch. Rise. He tells me, though I have not knelt. His gaze drops to the floor beside my feet. Your shadow is busy. He turns before the warning finishes being generous. You'll pour at the high table tonight. Marcus starts to say the thing cooks say, when kings pretend they understand staffing. The king's shoulder settles a fraction, and Marcus discovers he agrees after all. The door closes like a period, trying to end a paragraph. The sentence refuses to finish. I exhale for too long. Air was an afterthought. Fear was not. Helena, the head server, appears before I convince my knees to vote for standing. She assesses me like a cloth she might turn into something useful. She's presentable with scrubbing. Helena decides. if the girl can hold a decanter steady when men talk nonsense, she can pour. She drops a folded dress on my station. Deep blue. Not fine, clean. You'll wear this. And a face that doesn't argue. The kitchen exhales in pieces once the door swallows the crown. Flour falls. Broth remembers how to smell like comfort instead of pause. I tape my disguise back together with work. Work is not enough. By sunset the castle has changed coats. Stone that endures becomes stone that performs. Candles multiply like gossip. The great hall sucks in night and exhales gold. I stand where Helena puts me behind the high table, spine tall, eyes politely empty, and wonder if a binding can survive envy. Not of the nobles, of certainty. Nobles are just people paid to be sure out loud. Fanfares do their brass, throated best, and the room stands. King Kale wears black that refuses to shine. At his left, a white blade disguised as a woman high, Inquisitor Celine Vaudry. Her hair is the kind of white that announces itself. Iron rings her wrists as jewelry and threat. A crystal at her throat hums. It hums at me. Your Majesty? She purrs once seated. The hall quiets by instinct. Our order followed tremors to your borders. Shadows misbehave. Children are born with eyes the moon regrets. Iron warms when it should chill. Something old pretends to be new, and nearby. The crystal flares. My bones try to shrink. Duskvale has many old things. The king says. His voice is a knife wrapped in linen. Most leave us alone. Celine smiles without contributing warmth to the room. Most. I pour wine. I do not spill. When Lord Garin, red-cheeked and aging badly at arrogance, grabs my wrist to compliment the steadiness of my hand, my skin flashes. Not enough to make a lie of the binding. Enough to make the crystal H to be a siren. The king's hand intercepts a gleam of water before the Inquisitor's vial reaches me. It hisses on his palm. The scent is sanctified and ugly. No one threatens what is mine. He says, and the word does not seek permission to be true. The hall hears an alpha claim and tries to decide whether to be scandalized or safe. The Inquisitor hears a confession and tastes a promotion. Your Majesty, she says, sweet as knives, shall we test the rest of your staff while you bleed? Shall we test your restraint while I do? He asks, not looking away from my face. His burned hand is a promise he has not pledged words to yet. Helena, see the High Inquisitor escorted to her guest rooms and given the best view. He does not say of the gallows. He does not have to. Men who use courtesy like a blade do not need to show you where it cut. Celine leaves like a woman who never leaves. The hall shrugs and pretends to be hungry again. I pour. I do not think. Thinking is a door, and tonight too many are open. When the music staggers into something that believes it's cheerful, Helena breathes the kind of relief that wants to live until morning. You poured well, she says without affection, which is her affection. Set the last tray in the library. His Majesty takes silence with his books. I carry a tray that weighs no more than fruit and feels like a verdict. The corridors of Duskvale are maps that do not admit they are mazes. Moonlight spills through arrow slits like regret. I pass the portrait of a queen who learned how to win wars by pretending she lost at cards, and the statue of a wolf that forgave no one and was adored for it anyway. The library smells like leather and the patient dust of old decisions. The tray kisses oak. The room notices me and waits to see what I'll do about it. Stop running, he says, and I learn what it feels like to be caught by something that didn't chase. He is shadow and shape near the tall windows. The bandage on his palm is clean, the skin beneath it, not yet decided about scars. He studies me the way you study water when your thirst has learned manners. You could have let her burn me, I say. The binding creaks. Candles lean toward each other as if gossip might keep them warm. It would have solved things for you. His head tilts, like he's listening for wolves none of us can hear. What do I solve when I let a hunter prove herself right? Our eyes hold conversation our mouths do not risk. The part of him that is crown measures the part of me that is light I refuse to admit is still awake. Your name, he says gently, as if the wall behind it might break if he knocks too hard. Mira, I say stubbornly. It tastes like the lie it is. Not the one that keeps you alive, he says. The one the night uses when it has to stop lying to itself. Every binding fails eventually. Mine chooses now. The room breathes out, and my outline breathes in. Silver slips through skin, the way dawn slips through shutters, insisting without apology. My hair lifts as if water has decided to remember me. The whites of my eyes go soft as cloud. The pupils deepen until looking at me is like looking for the moon in a well. He doesn't step back. Lyra, he says, and the syllables land like a hand on a shoulder that forgot it belonged to a body. The bandage on his palm darkens, and then light begins to live under it. A conversation between pain and recognition. I am not human. I whisper, because we are collecting true things, and that is the most expensive in my pocket. Neither am I, he answers, and the library learns a new shape of silence. His change is not the tidy miracle the court loves when wolves demonstrate obedience. It is older. It remembers the first bargain and refuses to be impressed by the last one. His shadow unsheathes. Sigils rise beneath his skin like old map lines. For an instant his eyes are coins, hammered in a forge that did not need fire to be hot. When it ends, he is still a man and the room is still a room, and yet both are different now. Cursed, he says without drama. A thread in my blood goes back to before the night learned patience. Iron hates me. Holy water added its vote this evening. He flexes the burned hand, watching light armor into scar. If I am a crime to your kind, you're a reminder to mine. Why put your hand between me and a blade meant to find me? I ask. He looks away from the window, where the moon has the audacity to be gentle. Because the wolf in me reached for you years before I learned how to pretend not to notice. The window implodes. Darkness enters the room as if it always owned the lease. Not absence, intention. It moves, like hunger finally told to stop behaving. Between its pieces floats a shape that used to be beautiful. She brings the cold a funeral keeps after the mourners go. She brings my name without asking permission, daughter. My mother says, there are words humans set aside for safety hearth. Home, mother. The right mouths turn them into shelter. Hers turns them into harm. I do not speak her name. Names are doors. I have spent 10 years bricking this one shut. Kyle steps between us, which is brave and foolish, and the exact ratio of both that makes a king useful. You will not touch her, he says. It is not an argument. She smiles like glass would if glass learned jokes. You wound your hand to save a secret and call it honor. How quaint. I remember when kings were interesting. His shadows surge. His curse surges back. The room earns scars. Table gouged, ladder splintered. A shelf of law codes. Deciding they have finally suffered enough and lying down in a drift of paper. I hold them off with light until I can't. Binding for a decade makes magic polite and politeness gets tired. One slips past and finds his back. I move without thinking. Pain opens a bright red flower in my shoulder. The scream that leaves me is not a human sound. Glass goes first. The night beyond inhales. Surprised. Delighted? Possibly hungry. Where my blood lands, something grows. White at first. Moonflowers that have never seen a moon this close. Then darker. Petals shaped like shadows learn how to bloom without apology. The room understands we are not trying to break it. We are trying to teach it a new verb. Mother watches like an artist deciding whether to steal or applaud. Love, she says with contempt soft as velvet. You'd trade eternity for a man who will be ashes before your first 1,000 sunrises are finished. I have not lived, I say, breathing knives. I have hidden. She reaches for Kale with a word in the old tongue, and his curse folds. Knees hit floor like confession. Shadows lash him to the air. Give me your essence. She murmurs, coming close enough for me to smell the theft on her. Willingly, my bright girl. Let me finish the meal I began when I tore you out of the world that wanted you. I will let the wolf live long enough to regret his choices. I am not cruel. She is, but not in the way she thinks. Cruelty has imagination. She has habit. I walk toward her, and the iron, threaded through dusk veil, leans closer to hear me. Words are not minds, but they have memory. They recall the smith who whispered grief into them as he hammered, the queen who laced them with rules, kender than hers, the wolves who tested them for cracks and found respect hiding in the welds. I speak to that memory. Now, I tell it, and iron learns a new trick. The cage closes around her. You'll unmake yourself to stop me? She asks, unbothered, getting ready to be impressed with herself for surviving it. If that is the price, I say, steady as a floor, then I will pay. Light edges me. I can feel the part of me that is song reaching for the note it hasn't been allowed to hit in 10 years. Kyle's breath finds mine across the wreckage. He tears free of a binding meant for an older beast, not with muscle, but with bond. He crosses the room in an instant too long for clocks and holds me like he expects me to fight him for the right to vanish. Not alone, he says, and the curse under his skin opens its eyes. My light. I tell him, because we are telling the last true things. Your shadow. Balance, he says, and when we stop pretending not to be what we are, the room remembers how to hope. We let go. Not of each other, of the parts of ourselves that believed safety was smaller than the world. The wards do not break. They change. The hollow inside the woman who named herself my mother cannot survive in a room that chooses balance over hunger. She unthreads. The power she stole remembers it belongs to the ground, and the kids with silver fleck eyes, and the wolves who wish they could stop apologizing. When the light settles, the candles stop leaning. The moonflowers shine without needing a window. Kyle's hand is still on my face like he put it there to hold the world steady. I am still Lyra, stitched, now with a seam of shadow that lets me wear myself without tying it too tight. He is still cursed, and the curse has stopped acting like an enemy and started acting like a backbone. Down the hall, someone rings a bell for reasons bells have always loved. The city inhales. The night tries to remember what it was doing before we interrupted and fails. Tomorrow will require explanations, trials, renamings, and new doors. Tonight requires water, bandages, and a moment by a window where I don't have to bind anything except a wound. Kyle looks at my shoulder as if it insulted him by bleeding. You saved my life, he says, which is inaccurate. I stop pretending I had none to save. I correct, which is closer. He laughs, small and unbelieving and real. It sounds like a man who remembers he can. Outside, Duskvale rolls onto its other side. Inside, the king and the girl, who didn't blink, decide the next breath together. The bell that announced dawn was cracked. It rang anyway, thin and stubborn, like a body that refused the grave. I'd never liked dawn. It exposed too much. Last night, we had remade the world. This morning, the world wanted explanations. I stood in the center of Duskvale's throne hall, while 100 pairs of eyes wrote accusations they hadn't yet learned how to spell. The marble beneath me gleamed with strange veins. Silver twined through black stone, roots of light born from the battle in the library. Every vein pulsed with a heartbeat that wasn't mine alone. I had remade the walls without asking permission. The courtiers whispered like knives dragged on stone. She's not human. She bewitched the king. Did you see the moonflowers bloom through the floor? Their fear was an old song sung in a new key. I recognized the rhythm. The doors opened. The sound hit like thunder swallowed whole. King Kyle Draven walked in wearing scars like medals and silence like armor. The wound on his palm had healed into a silver mark that glowed faintly with every pulse of his heart. The wolf in him stood close to the surface, visible only in the still focus of his gaze. He took his throne but didn't sit. Bring the Inquisitor, he said. Chains chimed. High Inquisitor Selene Vauder entered, white robes pristine, wrists bound by the same iron she'd used to leash others. Her crystal pendant hung dim at her throat, its song faint but alive. Even weakened, she carried herself like a woman who believed the world would always bend back toward her will. The court held its breath. Kale's voice cut through it, low, even. You accused my servant of falsehood and cast holy water in my hall. You defied royal decree. Her lips curved. I defended mankind. I did what you refused to. And in doing so, I said before I could stop myself, you almost burned the only reason you still have a kingdom. The words spilled too sharp. The room shivered. Every gaze landed on me like falling daggers. Selene's smile was the slow uncoiling of venom. It speaks. Her attention slid over me the way frost takes glass. Tell us, little spark, what are you? Witch? Demon? Echo of the stars? Whatever mask you wear, the truth reeks through it. You've ensnared the Alpha King's mind. I met her eyes. You think love is a spell because you've never been chosen without one. The court gasped. Kyle's mouth twitched. Half amusement, half warning. Enough, he said softly. The single word carried alpha weight. The hall fell into obedience. He descended the steps. The wolf moved with him. Inquisitor, you stand accused of treason, cruelty, and blasphemy against balance. Balance, she repeated, tasting the word like poison. You speak of balance with that standing beside you. Her gaze slashed toward me. The crystal at her throat flared suddenly, feeding on her rage. You don't know what she is. None of you do? I know enough, Kale said. I know she bled for this realm, while you hid behind scripture. She bleeds silver. Selene hissed. Then perhaps silver is what this court needs. The gallery erupted. Shocked murmurs, rustling robes, the sound of belief cracking at the edges. Selene's restraint snapped. You're bewitched. She spat. Every word from her mouth drips with corruption. Corruption. I asked quietly. That's your word for change. Her eyes blazed. Change is what rot calls itself, before the stench sets in. The king raised his hand. Silence fell again. Let her speak, he said. Let the ethereal tell her story, then judge her by deeds, not birth. The court shifted uneasily, the sound of men remembering they still had hearts. I stepped forward into the pool of blue light. It wasn't courage. It was necessity shaped like defiance. I am Lyra, I said. The name resonated through the hall. The crystals embedded in the pillars hummed in answer. Last of the ethereal, yes. But not what you think. I told them everything. Not in the language of confession, but of truth made bare, the hiding, the binding. The mother turned hollow by her own hunger, the night the iron sang. As I spoke, the walls themselves whispered back. Silver veins glowed brighter, pulsing with every word, proof the palace remembered too. When I finished, no one spoke. Not even Celine. Then a voice from the gallery, a gray-haired noble, broke the silence. If she carries such power, how do we know she won't turn it against us next? The question was fair. Fear always is, until it chooses cruelty over caution. I met his eyes. You don't, I said simply. But neither do I know which of you will raise torches again when the night forgets my name. Trust is risk. Balance is choosing it anyway. The king's hand closed around the pommel of his sword. Not to draw it, but to remind the room who owned the silence. The ethereal stays under my protection, he said. Any who question it may test their courage outside this hall. One by one, heads bowed. Fear, respect, sometimes the same thing dressed in different robes. Celine, though, only smiled. Protection, she murmured. How noble. But who protects you from her? Her chains clinked softly as she lifted her bound hands. For a moment, I thought she prayed. Then I saw the faint etching of runes burned into her wrists. Old magic. Forbidden. She whispered a phrase older than the church itself. The crystal at her throat shattered. The shockwave punched through the hall. Candles exploded into sparks. The iron chandelier screamed as it twisted. Kale moved instantly, shoving me behind him. Energy slammed into his chest, flinging both of us backward across the marble. The crowd scattered. When the smoke cleared, Celine stood free. The broken chains lay at her feet, molten and steaming. Her eyes glowed with stolen light. I told you, she said, voice layered with echoes not her own. She's a contagion, and I've caught it. The magic inside her was wild, burning through mortal flesh. I could feel it. Ethereal essence twisted by fury. The same kind that had hollowed my mother. The hall warped around her, air bending like glass near flame. Kyle roared, half wolf now, half man, entirely fury. He charged. But she vanished, reappearing behind him, striking with an invisible lash of energy. He staggered. Blood hit the floor in bright red arcs. I reached for her magic through the pulse, still tethered to the crystal shards. Her essence screamed against mine. It wasn't just stolen. It was infected with the memory of my mother's hunger. "Celine, stop," I pleaded. "That power will unmake you!" "Better unmade than replaced," she snarled. "You want balance." "I'll give you balance. Ashes to ashes!" The next blast wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at the court. I moved without thought. Silver light erupted, wrapping the nobles in a barrier of moonfire. The force of her attack hit like a thunderclap. Pain flared, sharp and clean. But the shield held. Kale regained his footing, eyes gone molten gold. "Lyra!" he shouted. "Drop it!" "I can't," I gasped. "If I let go, it consumes them." "Then let me in." His voice was command and plea both. I hesitated, then opened the bond. The world folded. His darkness poured into my light bled into his shadow. The hall filled with a brilliance that was not pure, not corrupt, but whole. Together we struck. The blast met Celine's magic mid-air. For a heartbeat, all things existed in impossible balance. Then the crystal remnants around her neck exploded outward, shards of frozen sunlight scattering across the hall. She fell, screaming, the glow in her eyes extinguished. Silence again, thick, trembling, disbelieving. When it broke, it wasn't applause. It was the sound of a people realizing they'd survived something they didn't understand. Kyle turned to the guards. "Take her to the healers," he said. "If she lives, she answers for what she's done." Then he looked at me, tired, furious, tender. "And you? Come with me?" He led me through side corridors lit only by torches. The wolf in him walked close. I could feel it pressing against his skin. When we reached the war room, he slammed the door and braced his palms on the table, breathing hard. "You can't keep doing this," he said finally, standing between them and death, between me and reason. "I didn't ask for your reason," I said softly. "Only your trust." He laughed without humor. "Trust? You think that's a word kings get to use." "Then stop being a king." That silenced him. I stepped closer, the glow in my veins dimming to a steady heartbeat. "You wanted balance, Kyle. It doesn't come from thrones. It comes from choices." He looked up then, eyes shadowed. "You think I don't know what choice costs? I think you've paid in coin that wasn't yours." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The fire hissed. Somewhere in the distance, the city still murmured, unsure whether it should celebrate or pray. When he finally spoke, his voice had softened to something human. "You changed everything last night. So did you. I'm not sure we can survive what comes next. Then we survive it together." He reached for my hand. The silver mark on his palm met the light beneath my skin, and for a moment, The world remembered the way it had felt before fear invented borders. Outside, Duskvale was stirring. Word of the battle spread faster than fire. Some called it miracle, others heresy. I could hear both in equal measure from the streets below. The kingdom was dividing along a line neither sword nor sermon could erase. And beyond the walls, something watched. The night itself seemed thicker. The stars flickered wrong, as if seeing through a veil that had never before been transparent. Somewhere, deep in the old woods, the remnants of the hollow moved. My mother's essence had not been fully destroyed. It had scattered, and it was gathering again. Kyle felt it too. His head turned toward the window, nostrils flaring. "She's not done." "No," I said quietly. "The hollow never ends. It spreads." He looked at me, and in that moment I saw the ruler vanish and the wolf remain. Then we hunt. The hunt began at twilight. Kale assembled a small unit of trusted guards. Wolves who had seen too much to doubt him, and too little to fear me. I walked among them like a flame disguised as a girl. Every step toward the forest made my skin hum louder. The trees recognized me. Their sap carried memory older than kingdoms. The path narrowed. Moonlight dripped between the branches, cold and watchful. Somewhere ahead, the air smelled wrong, sweet like rot, familiar like grief. We reached the ruins of an old chapel, long devoured by vines. The hollow had nested here. The walls pulsed faintly, veins of corrupted light crawling over stone. Kyle signaled for silence. We entered. Inside, the air trembled with whispers. My mother's voice among them, stretched thin, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "You think you won, little star. You only cut the stem. The root still drinks. Shapes peeled from the shadows. Wraiths, half, formed, remnants of the energy she'd stolen from Celine's crystal. They moved like smoke and struck like memory. The wolves fought with claws and courage. I fought with light and truth. But the hollow fed on both. Every blow we landed birthed another whisper. The air itself became heavy with echoes of our own power turned against us. Kyle's growl cut through the chaos. "She's feeding on us!" I reached for the bond again. Not this time. I pushed his energy away. "No?" He snarled aloud. "Not alone." "I started this," I said. "Let me finish." Then I stepped into the heart of the ruin. The ground beneath me pulsed with silver, black veins, my mother's essence trying to regrow itself. I knelt and pressed my palm to the stone. Pain flared, the kind that teaches, not kills. "I see you," I whispered, "and I forgive you." Forgiveness is the only magic the hollow doesn't understand. The energy recoiled. For the first time, the whispers faltered. The wraiths shuddered, losing form, but the recoil came with a price. My vision blurred. Heat climbed my throat like liquid fire. Kyle's roar echoed. He was at my side before I fell, arms catching me as the floor cracked. releasing a surge of blinding light. When the glare faded, the ruin was still. The vines had withered. The hollow's voice was gone. Only the faint scent of rain remained. I opened my eyes. Did it work? He brushed blood from my cheek. If it didn't, then the gods have run out of miracles. I tried to stand. My knees disagreed. He lifted me without asking. "You need rest?" he said. "Rest," I murmured. "Or a reason to keep going?" He smiled, a real one this time. Both. We returned to the castle under a moon too full to be kind. Behind us, the forest whispered our names. Not in warning, but in gratitude. For the first time since I'd learned to hide, I didn't look away from my own shadow. It moved when I moved, not before. But as we crossed the courtyard, a messenger ran toward us, face pale, voice trembling. "Your Majesty?" he gasped. "The Order's outposts, they've begun to burn. No one knows by whose hand." Kyle's jaw tightened. "Not ours." "No, sire. The fires, they burn with silver light." Every head turned toward me. I felt the mark on my skin pulse. An echo, distant but undeniable. My mother's essence was gone, but something new had awakened in her absence. Balance, it seemed, had its own ideas. Kyle's hand found mine again. "Whatever this is," he said, "we face it together." For once, I didn't argue, because in the kingdom of shadows and stars, together was the only spell that still worked. The flames reached the horizon before we did. From the palace's northern watchtower, the sky was bleeding light, not orange or crimson, but a shimmering pale glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. It wasn't wildfire. It was something older, purer, and wrong in all the right ways. I stood beside Kyle, the scent of smoke wrapping the dawn in metal and memory. Below us, soldiers shouted orders, bells clanged. The city moved as one great body trying to smother a wound too deep to close. They said, "It started in the outer provinces." Kale muttered, jaw tight. "Silver fire. It doesn't burn wood. Only iron." I closed my eyes. The world hummed. "It's not destruction," I said slowly. "It's transformation." He turned to me, eyes flickering gold. "Meaning?" "Meaning someone has learned what I am, and they're trying to finish what I began." We rode north before the sun reached its full height. The wind carried whispers. Fear. Ah! Prayers to gods who had long since stopped listening. Every village we passed wore the same expression. Reverence edged with terror. Children reached toward me as we rode past. Some of them had silver dust in their eyes. Others glowed faintly beneath their skin. They weren't afraid. They knew. "You're doing?" Kale asked quietly. I shook my head. Not directly. My essence seeded the world. But this, I gestured to the distant shimmer. This is organized. Controlled. Someone is using the seeds. Who could do that? Only someone born from my light. By nightfall, We reached the first burned outpost. The walls stood untouched. The silver fire had left the stone hole, but melted every trace of iron into glass. The air shimmered faintly with residual energy. Flowers grew through the cracks of the floorboards, glowing. Silver-veined blossoms pulsing in rhythm with unseen power. A single word had been carved into the wooden arch above the gate. Not in blood, but in light. Mother. The word hit like a blade dipped in memory. Kyle's gaze snapped toward me. Lyra. I swallowed hard. She's not gone. I thought you destroyed her. I destroyed what she'd become. But she'd been feeding for a decade. Every fragment she consumed carried memory, instinct. Enough to rebuild. You're saying your mother. Not her. Something from her? The wind shifted. I felt it then. A presence, faint and familiar as a scar. We weren't alone. Stay behind me, Kel murmured. You should know by now. I whispered. I never do. A shape emerged from the smoke. Small, human-sized, cloaked in silver mist. At first I thought it a wraith, but then it stepped into the moonlight and breathed. A girl, no older than 15, eyes like molten silver, skin faintly translucent, veins glowing softly beneath the surface. She looked like me, and yet not. Who are you? Cale demanded. The girl tilted her head. You don't recognize me, father. The words fell like thunder. Kyle froze. What? Her gaze flicked to me. Not by blood, she said, her voice calm. Eerie, unhurried. By bond. You carry my mother's light and his shadow. I am what was left when both collided. She stepped forward, bare feet, leaving trails of luminescence on the ground. They called her the Hollow. But her essence had purpose. It found mine. I was born in the ashes of your war. You're impossible, I said. So were you. She stopped an arm's length away. Her presence made the air shimmer. I don't want war, she said softly. I want completion. Kyle's eyes narrowed. Completion? Balance, she corrected. The world still bleeds imbalance. Humans cling to fear, wolves to dominance, ethereals to purity. None of you learned. You only survived. And your fires? I asked. What are they teaching? Transformation through loss, she said. The iron must melt before it becomes a bridge. You sound like her, I whispered. She smiled faintly. She was my beginning, but not my end. Her gaze softened, and for the first time, I saw something heartbreakingly human in her. Sorrow. You remade the world, she said. But you stopped too soon. Kiel stepped forward, hand on his blade. And you plan to finish it by burning my kingdom. Not burn, she said gently. Rewrite. Her hand lifted. The ground trembled. Light rippled outward from her fingertips, spreading across the burned iron. The glass melted again, forming shapes. Symbols, runes, circles of power. Kyle drew his sword. Lyra? Wait, I whispered. The symbols weren't random. I recognized them. Ancient ethereal sigils of creation. The girl's eyes turned toward me. Help me, she said. Or stop me, but don't stand still. And then, before either of us could move, she vanished, dissolving into a swirl of silver dust. The days that followed blurred into tension and smoke. Reports flooded in. More fires, more light, more silver-eyed children awakening their powers. Some used it to heal crops and cleanse rivers. Others, less controlled, set towns aflame by accident. The world was changing faster than it could comprehend. The council demanded answers. The priests called it judgment. The wolves whispered prophecy. Kale called a meeting in the Hall of Balance. The chamber that had once been the Temple of Iron, now transformed into a place where light and shadow coexisted in uneasy harmony. They call her the Ember Child, he said, pacing before the council table. A being of light who claims descent from the ethereal queen and the Alpha King. So the rumors are true, one of the generals said. You sired this creature. Kyle's growl silenced him. Watch your tongue. She's not his child, I said. She's ours, but not in any way flesh understands. She's the echo of what we became that night. The priest at the end of the table leaned forward. Then she's a god. No, Kale said grimly. She's a storm, and storms don't worship. That night, I stood alone on the palace balcony, watching the stars pulse faintly silver. The world below glowed in patches. Fields lit like lanterns. Rivers reflecting colors that shouldn't exist. Magic was no longer hiding. It was everywhere. I should have felt pride. Instead, I felt dread. You're thinking too loudly, Kale said, joining me. I smiled faintly. You're listening too closely. Hard not to, when your thoughts hum through the air like a song. He came to stand beside me. Do you think she's evil? No. I think she's us, before we learned restraint. Then, she's unstoppable. Maybe not unstoppable, I said quietly, but unteachable. He sighed. Then we'll have to teach her the hard way. Kale, she's just a child. He met my gaze. So were you, once. And look what the world made of you. The next morning, the Ember Child came to us. No warning. No guards. Just light spilling into the great hall, until it formed her shape again. Taller now, older by years that hadn't passed. She was growing fast, feeding on the energy she unleashed. I gave the world its chance, she said simply. Eat rejected it. Now I'll build a new one. Akiel rose from his throne. Over my dead body, she smiled. That's the idea. Before anyone could react, she raised her hand. The silver fire leapt, not toward him, but toward me. It didn't burn. It sang. Energy coiled around my body, lifting me off the floor. Kale shouted my name, but his voice sounded distant, muffled. The world folded inward, a spiral of light and memory. When it cleared, I was standing somewhere else entirely. The place was vast, endless, and silent. A realm between realms. The floor shimmered like water made of stars. The sky was black, but it pulsed faintly with the heartbeat of creation. And in the center stood the Ember Child. You shouldn't have followed her here. A voice whispered behind me. I turned and froze. My mother, or what was left of her. She was translucent now, soft-edged, a memory-given form. I tried to stop her, she said. But she isn't me anymore. She called you her beginning. She was born from my fragments. But the moment she touched your light, she changed. She became will. Purpose without guidance. What does she want? Everything you denied yourself. I looked toward the girl. Perfection. Control. My mother corrected. She thinks balance is control. The Ember Child's voice filled the void. You built peace from fear and called it harmony. But I see the truth. Humans still kill wolves. Wolves still cage magic. You didn't fix the world. You just painted it prettier? Because the world doesn't heal overnight, I said. It learns. I won't wait for it to learn, she said. I'll remake it. Her hands spread wide. The void trembled. Stars bent toward her. Stop! I shouted. You'll destroy everything? Destruction is creation's first language. I ran forward, light bursting from my skin. Our powers collided. Silver against silver, mother and daughter, origin and outcome. The explosion tore through the void like a heartbeat gone wild. For a moment, I saw everything. Her pain, her loneliness, her conviction that she was saving us all. She wasn't evil. She was certain. And certainty was the most dangerous kind of magic. Reality buckled. Kyle's voice pierced the void, echoing faintly, as he forced his way in through the bond. Lyra! Come back to me! I reached for him, but the Ember Child grabbed my wrist. You can't stop me, she whispered. You made me too strong. Maybe, I said softly. But I didn't make you alone. I called the bond fully open. Kyle's shadow flooded the realm. His presence filled the void. Ancient, grounded, terrifyingly human, he appeared beside me, half-shifted eyes blazing gold. You want balance, he growled. Then face both halves of what made you. The void roared. Light and shadow intertwined, clashing with her radiance. The three of us spiraled through creation itself. Child, mother, and monster. Rewriting reality with every strike. When the light finally died, I was on my knees, breath shaking, surrounded by ash that glowed like embers. The Ember Child lay nearby, unconscious, her form flickering between girl and starlight. Kale knelt beside me, one arm around my shoulders. I's she. Alive, I said, but different. He touched her hand. What now? I looked at her face. Peaceful now, younger again, as if the fight had burned away her years. Now, I said, we teach her what balance really means. When we returned to Shadowmere, dawn was breaking. The fires across the land had gone out. What remained were fields of glass transformed into silver soil, fertile and glowing faintly in the morning light. Life had changed again, not by force, but by understanding. The child woke 3 days later, her silver eyes softer now. She looked at Kale first, then me. Was I wrong? No, I said gently. You were incomplete. And now? Now you're home. She smiled weakly. Then teach me. Kyle's voice rumbled low beside me. Will, but as I held the girl's hand, I felt it. Faint, distant, but real. The tremor of something beyond our comprehension stirring awake. The world was not done changing. We had lit a fire too large for one kingdom to contain. Kale felt it too. His gaze met mine, equal parts awe and warning. We've started something, haven't we? Yes, I said. The second age of balance. And if it falls apart, then we build again. The city learned the child's name before we chose one for her. They called her Astra, star made flesh, ember made gentle. In the weeks after the fires died, she slept the way new worlds sleep deeply. Then all at once, waking to a sky that had learned a new color while she dreamed. We lodged her in the East Solar, the chamber where dawn arrives, first and never leaves empty, handed. The walls there remember summer better than winter. That mattered. Astra needed warmth without worship, light without pedestal. Kale posted 2 of his oldest wolves outside her door. They were not jailers. They were men who had learned, with age and wounds, how to guard a threshold without knotting it shut. On Astra's first morning awake, she asked for a book. Not a spell book. A story. Something where people choose wrong and live to try again. She said, head tilted, eyes unreadable metal. Not a lie that calls itself perfect. I brought her folk tales the priests had not managed to salt out of our libraries. Tricksters who kept villages honest. Queens who married carpenters to remember how doors feel. Rivers that learned names before bridges. She read with hands like someone learning to touch. She asked questions with a surgeon's tenderness and a hammer's focus. She slept with a candle burning, as if she needed proof light, stayed when eyes closed. What does sadness feel like? She asked on the 3rd dawn, watching fog make lace of the city. Like a bruise you forget about until you bump it again, I said. What does love feel like? She asked on the 4th. Kale came to stand in the doorway without meaning to. He didn't answer. Neither did I. I'm not sure anyone who hasn't been ruined a little can describe it without lying. Astra decided to find out herself. The Treaty of 4 Waters, brought ambassadors to Duskvale before the moon had finished its next cycle. The northern packs, the southern coast, lords, the hill princes who believe in knives more than gods, and the river court of Glassmere, whose rulers wear diplomacy like silk and mercy like a rumor. Glassmere arrived last, late enough to be noticed, early enough to be forgiven. Their procession cut the morning like a spindle through gold thread. Banners, pale blue, stitched with mirrored fish that seemed to turn as you watched them. Music harp and hull. River sounds taught to behave. At its head rode Prince Rowan of Glassmere, son of a queen whose smile bankrupts small nations. He wore no crown. He didn't need one. Some people are born with rooms deciding to face them. Rowan was one of those. Dark hair, river, green eyes. A scar at the mouth he refused to hide. As if honesty had once bitten him, and he decided to keep the mark. He dismounted with ease, bowed to Kale with the exact depth that says, "I will not kneel, but I came to talk." And to me he bowed twice, once for my title, and once, I think, for the thing in me that had tried to unmake itself and failed beautifully. And then he saw Astra. You could feel the room tip. She stood at my shoulder in a gray dress that refused to be interesting, hair braided back so it wouldn't catch on wonder. When Rowan's gaze found her, something in his face did not brighten. It stilled, as if his life had been a river, forced to run too fast and, suddenly, met a bend that asked it to slow. Astra blinked, startled by the world being a mirror for once. "Prince Rowan," Kale said, reading everything and forgiving nothing. "Welcome to Duskvale." "King Kale." Rowan answered, hands empty. "Queen Lyra." He used the word most courts had begun testing on their tongues. It didn't fit me. It did not fit me. And you must be the star the songs pretend not to be afraid of. "Astra," she said, like a trial offering its own verdict. Rowan did something dangerous. He smiled at her first. We walked the river, skirting the lower city, that afternoon. A courtesy tour with guards pretending to admire carp while tracking knives in crowd shadows. Kale and I led with Helena flanking, counting exits like prayers. Rowan fell into step beside Astra, careful, curious, self-aware enough to ask questions with the respect of someone who knows the price of answers. "What do you like?" he asked, when lesser men would have asked what she was. "Listening?" Astra said, "to things that don't know they're speaking." He pointed to the river. "What does it say?" "That it misses its own mouth," she said after a moment. "That it is tired of carrying everyone else's grief to the sea and never tasting salt." He looked at me. "You made a girl who tells the truth without making it bleed." "I didn't make her," I said. "I stopped breaking her." Kael's eyes did not leave the crowd. The wolf inside him kept pace with a prince whose danger wasn't a blade, it was understanding. Rowan kept talking. Not performative chatter. Remembered things. The weight of a ceremonial oar. The first time you learn water can drown grief as neatly as it drowns men. The way Glassmere's great bridge hums in winter. Frost acting as a bow across its ribcage. Astra listened like someone learning a new instrument by ear. When she spoke, her voice had a new tenderness on its edges. "Why is your scar smiling?" she asked, blunt as weather. "Because I survived it," he said. "And you?" he asked in return, nodding toward the faint, almost invisible spiral on her wrist, where my mark echoes in her. "Why is your light softer than the stories?" Astra glanced at me before answering. "Because I learned that being a torch is not the only way to see." Rowan did not reach for her. He did not crowd her. He adjusted his gait so their strides matched. Cale noticed. Wolves always do. That night, the river laid down quiet as a cat. Glassmere's tents glowed like bottled dawn along the lower bank. From our high balcony, the camp looked like a second constellation someone had spilled and then decided to keep. "You don't trust him," I said. Cale stood with his hands on the stone, eyes on water. "I don't trust anyone who knows exactly how loud to laugh near a throne." "He laughs quieter near her," I said. "That's what I don't trust," he answered, and the mark in his palm warmed under moonlight. Jealousy makes honest men rude and liars poetic. Kyle is neither. He is something rarer, afraid for the right reasons and saying so. "Rowan wants an alliance," I said. "Between a river that touches every kingdom and a city that learned to hold light without blistering. It's not a bad idea." "He also wants the part of her that would choose a current over a fire," Cale said. "And Astra doesn't yet know that currents drown you gently."